Hello and welcome to episode, I think it's 121. Wow.
Yes, first one of 2026. Go
Yeah,
figure.
that's right. Of CRTV. I am Martin Schneider, VP and Principal Analyst, covering all things go-to-market, growth, sales, all that kind of cool stuff.
And I'm Larry Dignan, Editor-in-Chief of Constellation Insights, and we're here to talk about episode 121 and the first one of 2026, which the craziest thing is it's just been busy as hell. It's kind of nuts.
It's been a crazy start.
Yeah, so we got off to a fast start. So in this news hit, we'll cover robotics, CES 2026, a bit of retail, and just what to look ahead of. Let's get to the news.
So a lot going on. The year ended and began with a flurry of interesting M&A. We saw ServiceNow by Armis, Meta by Manus. Microsoft just picked up a data unification company called Osmos. And all that has to do with AI, right? So what are we seeing, right? We're seeing that I think a lot of these companies are now figuring out where their major gaps were when it comes to both security and precision data. I want to kind of lean down into that precision data concept, because what I'm starting to see, especially as we roll into NRF and other events, and what we've had this week and CES happening last week, is really, precision data is critical, right? You saw how many surveys, how many other, vendors we've talked to talking about their customers I've talked to talking about trying to use the vendors for more general purpose AI and agentic flows, and it wasn't giving the results they thought, right? So really what I think we're starting to see is a kind of doubling down on, the tools, the platforms, all the components that we need to get to secure precision data, right? And that's where, it's gotten interesting, right? We're seeing even smaller moves in partnerships, like Sugar CRM is partnering with Syspro so that the ERP data is pretty much packed in there so that you can actually create, precision insights, make precision decisions, right? It's all over the place, right? So, but what I'm kind of seeing is that I think that mindset of agents aren't people. Don't just build an agent and think it's going to go and do things without, proper training, without proper modeling, without all that kind of stuff. And look at jobs to be done. Agents will never replace an entire human, right? Right. One of the interesting things that I've seen is Salesforce, in talking with them and having a couple briefings with them at the beginning of the year, is they've kind of renamed that sales development rep agent to an engagement agent. Really kind of generalized it around the kind of thing it does rather than the person it might replace. And I think that's a smart thing, right? And really focusing on, hey, you've got untouched leads. A human was probably never going to touch them anyway. Put the agent on it, and you can actually see some good results. And you're augmenting your go-to-market, not replacing people, right? And I think it's a good message, definitely for those who are on the anti-AI human replacement bus. But also, it just makes more sense. Focus on the jobs to be done. And then what we're seeing coming out of NRF this week with both SAP and Google is, let's take these jobs to be done, these flows, especially ones that are like almost always digital and that humans don't really touch, and optimize them, right? When we think about, shopping cart automation, when we think about, optimizing personalization, all those types of things, humans can't really do that anyway in an e-commerce phase. So we're really seeing this, how do we get to precision data, and how do we focus on jobs to be done? How do we stop thinking of agents as humans or anthropomorphizing the agent? And I think that's a good evolution that we're seeing. And I think that's kind of what, has been the weird kind of theme in my head as we kick into 2026. There's been, like I said, a lot of M&A. There's a lot of interesting stuff, but I think really that kind of narrowing focus when it comes to agentic flows and workflows to let's focus on some microprocesses, jobs to be done, things that we can very much predict how they're going to happen because we have that precision data at either point of entry or in the background because we've done the work. That's what's going to drive success for agentic AI.
Yeah, so a couple key themes here. One, NRF, Google had a bunch of stuff on sort of ad units, basically being able to complete shopping journeys from basically search in AI mode. They had some interesting experience in shopping agents that were offered by Google Cloud. You saw some similar things from Microsoft. But the big theme at NRF was really just about engagement, like even all the way to the frontline workers. So they're trying to get that experience and personalization. The other key thing to note here is just that precision data stuff you were talking about. Very interesting stuff at CES. What stuck out to me wasn't the robots, because honestly, I mean, we're doing a thing with Esteban later in the show, but we just think humanoid robots are nonsense. Like, why would you create something as inefficient as the human body? But I'm just digressing here. The other thing about CES that stuck out was a lot of the enterprise use cases. Caterpillar was up there. Mercedes was up there touting, how they're using NVIDIA's basically automated driving platform. Blue Origin was up there talking about precision and using AMD like on the lander when disconnected. So there were a lot of enterprise use cases to look at, and a lot of that was basically using Nematron models, which are open source, and adding data on top of that. And one thing I noted in my newsletter was, so Jensen Huang he basically said that open source models are 6 months behind proprietary. So if I'm a CXO, why the hell would I use a proprietary model? Because by the time you get stuff implemented, or 6 months is not a long time.
It's nothing. Yeah.
And most of the enterprise use cases, I don't know if you need a bleeding edge model.
No.
So it sets up 2026 for a lot of different things to look at. But I think it is the year of enterprise AI use cases and driving that data and personalizing it, and also just leveraging, what makes the enterprise unique. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. I think it is going to have big implications for the big spending of AI.
Yeah.
If you use open source models, things get more efficient. I don't know why you need to spend as much money as you were expected to. And we're already seeing this from the software vendors, right? Like Salesforce, Mark Benioff was basically saying, we love all of our LLMs, they're all of our children, but the cheapest one wins.
Yep.
ServiceNow, they worked with NVIDIA on Nematron, and then they basically customized their own model that's less expensive. So you're already seeing it from the software vendors who have got to spend on these models. And, the argument here is that I think enterprise is going to do something very similar.
No, of course. Yeah. I mean, because it comes to that kind of two-factor of specialization and cost, right? And if you can leverage open source to reduce the cost while also focusing on smaller subsets of data that are for your audience, which is, whether you're an industry player or whether you're a certain use case, whatever that is, right? You're going to split the difference at least there. And I think that's what we're going to see. So I think, it's going to be an interesting time. And to that point, that those use cases that were at CES, it's kind of becoming a new version of, especially when you look at Blue Origin, you look at some of what the kind of auto manufacturers and others are doing. It's kind of like if we can land a man on the moon, we can blank for B2B. I can do a better lead flow. I can get a better pipeline management. And I think and these proof points are coming out, and that precision data. It's like, look, if we can keep astronauts alive in space with AI, we can absolutely do a better sales development process, right? And get engagement models fixed, or at least improved, right? So interesting times indeed. Wild start as always to a fun year. Looks like it's going to be.
Exactly. So that's all we have for the news this week. Stay tuned. I'll talk to Mike Nee about all you need to know about decision velocity in the year ahead. And then we'll end with Esteban Kolsky, where we just riff on why humanoid robots suck. They look great on stage though.
Yeah, look, it's fun window dressing, but really, why?
Exactly. But there wasn't one keynote at CES that didn't have a humanoid robot running around. But hi, I'm Larry Dignan with Constellation Insights, and I'm here with Mike Nee. He is our analyst covering data to decisions. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Larry, always fun.
So I've been kind of thinking through 2026 predictions and asking each analyst what's the one thing CXOs need to do in 2026.
If there's just one thing, it's going to be that 2026 becomes a year of decision velocity and how to start looking at putting the pieces together for the shift towards a decision-centric architecture.
So what do we look like when we hit decision velocity nirvana? I guess what's the end state? We can kind of start there and work backwards.
We've been talking about this for a long time. We've all been in technology for a while, and decision velocity, it's really that accuracy, right? The impact it has, the timeliness. And this is where we've been saying the ability to sense, decide, act, and learn at enterprise scale and repeat that safely has been sort of that nirvana. And what we're really looking at from 2025 is a lot of the groundwork is put in place to really start shifting that focus, right? Going from POCs, proof of concepts to proof of value, and the shift towards process automation, all driven by how do I collapse a lot of decisions that have been previously needed humans in the loop.
So do you think the building blocks are all in place, or is that for like early adopters? I mean, I agree, like between agentic AI and all the connections and the data platforms, it seems like all the parts are there. I'm not sure I've seen anybody put it together per se.
Well, and this is where you already see consolidation happening. Data platforms have moved up to be data and AI. There's plenty of reasons for that. We won't get into it. When you say components, the big chunks are there. And what we're still missing is this next layer, which is going to rise to support the ability to have automation at scale, which is context. People talk about RAG. They've talked about a lot of the components, vector databases. We've been playing with a lot in 2025. In 2026, context engineering replaces prompt engineering as the AI pressure point. And we're going to see that as bringing a lot of these components together and providing governance, which is something we're going to have to experience. A lot of first movers have hit those friction points in 2025. Now you're seeing some of that being productized and moved into helping connect a lot of these components we're going to use for decision velocity in 2026.
What is the difference? I mean, we've kind of had this debate internally too. What's the difference between decision velocity and simply automation?
Well, let's take a look at it from the big shifts in sort of architecture. Yesterday we used to be talking about data, analytics, and insight. Today we're going data, context, decisions and actions. Let me just give you a quick example. We just talked to Esteban about this. When I'm in a car heading to the airport and I call United and I have a flight coming up, should I have to explain all that to an agent? Or should I be meted immediately by an agent that's actually understanding that I probably don't have enough time to make my flight and give me some options? Look, if we talk about the shift of basic automation, yeah, we know how to execute on things. If I want to change a plane, I actually have now an app for that. Look, we've had an app for that since iPhone, right? But we don't have that guidance in terms of how do we actually move analytic or have automation, AI-driven automation, make smarter decisions for me.
So I guess walk me through the change management here. How much is decision velocity based on culture, technology, building blocks? I guess what's all that's missing here?
Well, what's interesting is it is a combination of culture and technology. If I look at the conversations we've had with executives and we work with a lot of leading organizations, modernization of their data stack has been something ongoing for years. 80-20, probably good enough. What's going to change is the approach. We're going to start looking at process automation and how do we actually think about the decisions within that. And that means I actually now have something that's measurable, right? A lot of the failures of the years past has been not owning something that's measurable, have an owner, but also within that context, I now know exactly how I want to structure the data, some of the semantics or the data about the data that then allows me to do experimentation and iteration on the AI-driven automation on that. And so what you're going to see is a shift towards teams that can actually take on and own processes and not just make a one-time re-engineering, but continuously change and find new opportunities. And that's what we're going to see is a shift for both the technologies and discover what we still need. with the organizational design and the type of enablement that's needed to have these type of distributed change management.
All right. Thanks for joining us, and look forward to tracking this throughout 2026.
Looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Cool. All right. Of course, I forgot to hit Otter, but I can do that and get you.
It's all good. I did forgot to hit Otter too. Well, I have a headset in, so I couldn't Otter anyway. You can just stuff the outcome into Otter, which is what I do, and it gives me a transcript.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll do that.
So if you have a paid version of Otter?
Yeah.
There's a import button. Well.
Hi, I'm Larry Dignan with Constellation Insights, and we're here with our chief distiller, Esteban Kolsky. As CES has taken off this week, there's been nothing but robots, a parade of them, and Esteban thinks this is a horrible idea, and a bunch of bunk. So with that set up, yeah, so you had a newsletter, I think a couple weeks ago, where you were just like, the focus on humanoid robots is, just kind of silly. And here we have CES, and Jensen Huang's on stage with probably 24 robots. Most of them humanoids. We got humanoids running all around Las Vegas right now. Why is this a bad idea?
Well, how much time do we have? Let's do it in a couple of minutes. First let me summarize what I put in the newsletter, which is a good starting point, right? The human hand has 17,000 neuroreceptors that allow it to have an infinite range of granularity for sensitivity and dexterity and maneuverability and strength and many other things. What it doesn't have is unlimited strength. So to create a humanoid robot with a hand that is similar to the human hand has so far cost hundreds of millions of dollars for little, no a lot of gain. There was a robot that was introduced in early November that was going to go into production lines, and he had 6 hands. Instead of being a better robot, it was a humanoid robot with 6 arms and 6 hands, if you can imagine that, kind of like a god level thing, right? And for that amount of, it cost about $48 million to develop that thing to one specific function. And what it did is basically cut down in the production time by 30%. So you're spending $48 million in a single function with a 30% gain just to replicate something that is not even the best possible way to do things. We have very inefficient bodies for anything other than our lives. Our bodies are not meant to do the things that we want robots to do. So why copy it just so that it looks like us, only for the purpose of actually making it attractive and making it acceptable for people? Most of the robots that you actually see that are, overperforming, they're industrial robots that look nothing like humans. They can lift an entire cat, flip it over, put it in a vat of black paint, take it out, dry it, and then put it out in like 30 seconds instead of the time that it took us, which was like 6 hours. That's the type of thing that you do when you focus on the function versus like the form. And that's why humanoid robots are like a really bad idea. They cost a lot of money. They're incredibly hard and expensive to train for usually a single function or a couple of functions. And then they don't really deliver the value that goes against the cost of producing them.
So we've seen the humanoid. I think the government of China has even called it a bubble.
They have.
Is this
it's
really
an article that it's there? Yeah.
Yeah. Is this really all just for show?
It's a way to make robots acceptable. I mean, from the beginning of sci-fi, robots look like humans because that's the way to make them acceptable. If you have I can't remember the other one that was in the Star Wars, in the new one, the little 8 ball with the other one on top that kind of roll over in the new series of the Star Wars in the second series.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't
so
remember.
That was a much more efficient robot than like a 3CPO or an R2D2, right? But
Right.
the R2D2 and the 3CPO were accepted by humans because they look like us. They have similar functions to what we have. They have a mouth and eyes and hands and things they do that we do. And that's the problem. It's like, the only purpose of the humanoid is to actually, they have 2 purposes. Number 1, and it's the most efficient, make money for Hollywood by putting them in movies. And number 2, be accepted by humans in the way that robotics wouldn't be if they were just to be like some, ultra efficient, ugly looking thing.
So the road forward here is, I don't deny that AI and robotics seem to be on this merger course, so to speak.
I agree with you 100%.
Do you think it's just a focus on the use case and the best form factor to make it work?
I think that the smart companies, the ones that are going to move forward, are going to do that. UPS, Walmart, both of them have announced incredible projects in the last 6 months that they're going to be using function-specific robots. UPS is going to design robots to load trucks. If you think that most of the money that UPS spends in transportation, is actually loading and unloading trucks. If you can get specialized robots that will do that, they can reduce the cost of creating a truck and getting ready to go by almost 70%, right? Yes, most college kids won't have a job in 10 years when this becomes reality. But if UPS is spending $400 million, I promise you there's a lot more than $400 million that are coming in the back end to that. Walmart is actually running dark warehouses where there's not only no light, but there's just all these like function-specific robots that they copy from Amazon, where they move inventory across and distribute it in a much more efficient way. So that's the value to use robotics, not to make them look like us.
Right. So, and those robots won't be humanoid forms.
They're not the humanoid forms. If you look at the Amazon robots that do warehouse maintenance, they look like ultra-sized and the ultra-fast Roombas. The little vacuum cleaners. Yeah.
So where does this head? And I guess there's a lot of startups focused on humanoids in terms of.
There is, and there were a lot of startups focusing on LLM wrappers as products, right? That they're failing already. And that's the same thing that's going to happen to them. I mean, there's no question, like you said earlier, and I agree 100%, there's absolutely no question that AI and robotics are going to merge in the next few years. There's no question whatsoever. My next newsletter talks about, things like UPS and Walmart and other function-specific robots that make more sense, right? But to do it right, you need to do it in a way that returns money, not that it gets investment. And that's the difference. Your goal is to create something that's useful or something that gets you money. And humanoids get you money, but they're not going to be very useful.
So let's take a company like Boston Dynamics, right? It's owned by Hyundai. Yeah. They got their humanoid robot that winds up on 60 Minutes. I mean, does that just become a marketing expense at some point?
It is.
Dog wins out or some other form factor?
There's not a single time that I don't watch the quadruped robot that Boston Dynamics has dancing to the downtown song from Bruno Mars and doing the moonwalk that I don't crack up laughing, right? I mean, the amount of money and time that it takes to teach it that and to get it to do that for no reason other than marketing and to be accepted, right? There's use for quadrupeds, there's use for bipeds, there's use for hands, but there was a study that I read a couple of years ago where two robotic companies decided to create a robot that did a much better job of sorting fruit in a cereal belt, right? This is one of the simplest things to do. It's been done traditionally with cameras and blow robots that just blow it out of the way. Somebody decided to do a hand that could actually feel the fruit to see if it was good or not, and they spent hundreds of millions of dollars, and still the camera with the blower worked 85-90% faster and more efficient than the hand. So it just let's find the easiest way to get it done. Let's find what the robots can do, and let's go for that. That would be my advice. But yeah, you want to do a humanoid because it's good publicity, do it. I have no problem. I will laugh at it, like I laugh at the Boston Dynamics quadruped dancing the moonwalk. But I don't see the value in that.
Right. So when do you think there'll be a moment in the years ahead where everybody just goes, okay, this humanoid thing's silly, or do you think they're around forever?
I think that CES is helping to get to the point that we realize that it's silly. We didn't have if you look at last year, China did, humanoids playing soccer, the humanoid Olympics, they did humanoids doing things. This is part of the article that you referenced when China says that it's overhyped and in a bubble, right? We tried many things and it didn't go anywhere. I think that this push by CES is gonna put more humanoids in the front line. It's gonna put them under a closer examination, and we're gonna realize that there's no value. So hopefully within the next 2 or 3 years, they will be relegated to what they used to be, which is basically Hollywood lore more than anything else.
Right. All right. Anything to add on the humanoid front?
Go humans, boo robots.
All righty. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Now, looks like that is a wrap on episode 121 of CRTV. As always, make sure you are subscribing to CRTV on YouTube, and make sure you are also heading on over to ConstellationResearch.com and subscribing to Larry's Insights. That's where you get the newsletter and you get all the insights about everything that's happening in tech on a seemingly unending basis. You are the busiest man in tech, Larry, and we all appreciate it. But again, thanks a lot for joining, and we will probably see you next week.
That's right. Next week.
2 weeks, sorry.
2 weeks. Yeah. In 2 weeks, we got the Mueller Millers. They'll bring you, Holger and Liz will bring you episode 122 of CRTV. In the meantime, follow us on LinkedIn and X and all those other fun places we're at. Cheers. Talk to you later.
Happy New Year, guys. Bye.